Okay, welcome to McDougall's Medicine with Dr. John and Mary McDougall. I'm their daughter, Heather McDougall, and the CEO of the McDougall Program. This hour is yours. So we're going to start out talking about the lower GI, actually, more importantly, the perfect bowel movement. And we'll be taking your questions on that, and then we'll move into general questions from there. I won't be able to get into all the questions, but know that we'll be back next Sunday and every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific. So let's get started. Hi, Mom and Dad, Dr. McDougall and Mary, how are you?
Hi, nice to be with you. We really look forward to this Sunday evening together. But we are going to do it every Sunday, and it's a place for you to come and learn some new things and interact with us, and also a place to share with friends and relatives who need to know our message. So I hope you're spreading the good news. We noticed we've been doing this, I think it's our fourth week.
Third. Sorry.
Let's see, we did obesity, we did diabetes, then we did one general. So this will be our fourth.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
And we've been increasing.
Well, I can't believe that.
We've been increasing about 1,000 viewers every week. So if we keep at that pace, we'll be up to where we think we ought to be very soon. Anyway,
so it sounds like Heather got a lot of questions already.
Lots.
Yeah,
Great.
Well, that's great. Yeah, that's what we hope for, is that people would get used to this and then kind of have a chance to ask their questions, and gives us a chance to really relate to people and talk about things they're interested in.
Okay, well, I just wanted to start out by my investigation, getting ready for this talk with you. I looked back at some of the things I'd written in the past, and I did a whole series on the intestinal tract written back in 2002, and it's in my...
I couldn't believe it when he told me he wrote this 20 years ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago. And I looked at a newsletter called In Search of the Perfect Bowel Movement, which was almost 20 years exactly. It was September of 2002. And I found this passage that I wrote 20 years ago, and I'd like to convey it to you. Well, I'd like to read it to you the best I can. It's called, What is an Ideal Bowel Movement? Ideally, the abdomen will be completely comfortable until the time to eliminate, and then an urge, with no pain or distress, will be felt in the lower abdomen. There is no breakneck rush to the bathroom, and if necessary, a short delay is easily achieved until the proper facilities are located. The actual movement is painless and accompanied by a sense of pleasant relief, and occurs after one light abdominal push, no severe or repeated straining. Maximum downloading time will be less than 60 seconds.
Oh, I like that, downloading time.
A feeling of complete evacuation is experienced, and any further urge to defecate disappears until sometime later when the rectum is filled again. 1 to 3 movements occur daily, usually in the morning, shortly after rising. The stool is large, unformed, more like a cow plop than a tube, and colored shades of light yellow, orange, or brown, depending upon the foods consumed. Cleanup afterwards with a small amount of toilet tissue is effortless. And this is what made me want to read this to you with the last sentence. I always wondered why my dogs, cats, and birds never required toilet tissue. I guess it's because I always fed them properly, the foods they were designed to eat. Now, how's that for an introduction on the lower intestinal tract?
Well, it's what everybody talks about.
Well,
They're talking about the lower intestinal tract. It's bowel movements. How many questions do we get about, what is the perfect bowel movement supposed to look like? I have to show you this. It's so important to people that I actually have a coffee mug that has what's called the Bristol stool chart. I don't know, it's backwards, you can't see it, but there's actually pictures of bowel movements, and they're called by types. The first one starts with the little hard fecal marbles that you talk about all the time, and it goes on to the tubes, and then the cow plops.
Mary, nobody else would talk to these folks about such a shameful, mysterious part of the body as the bowels, especially the bowel movement. But at our age, we can do that and get away with it. So, I've tried to make the presentations at 5 o'clock on Sunday evening ones of popularity. And so we did diabetes, which about 14% of the Western population has, is frank diabetes, and half are pre-diabetic. And then last week we did one on obesity, and 80% of people are overweight or obese. Somewhere approximating 40% are obese these days. And estimates are that 70% of people by the end of this decade in the southeast of the United States will be obese, not just overweight, but obese. So I've tried to pick a popular topic, and what could be more popular?
Well, everybody has to have a bowel movement.
Well, they look forward to it either with fear and disdain, or with pleasantness. I mean, it's something you think a lot about, and something that you have to deal with every day. And it's either a pleasant.
But it's natural.
It's natural. It's pleasant, or it can be horrible. Horrible. And so, it begins with the food. What ends up in the intestinal tract depends upon what you put in your mouth. And the type of diet we teach is a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables, no animal foods, and no dairy. Particularly no dairy when it comes to bowel movements, because dairy protein causes the bowel to become paralyzed. You see this a lot in children as they have terrible constipation. It's because of the cow's milk. There was a study that was published in 1998 in the New England Journal of Medicine, where they took these severely constipated kids. I mean, they had a bowel movement every 3 to 15 days. And every 3 to 15 days. And all they did, and by the way, that was with a laxative, and all they did was take them off the cow's milk. And 68% of them were relieved completely of their constipation.
So what does it mean when the bowel is paralyzed? It just doesn't move, or it doesn't?
Yeah, the bowel didn't contract. It's not just the lack of fiber, Mary, which is the Western diet is deficient in fiber. No animal product has fiber, so there's no fiber in dairy or meat or poultry
so
or
the
fish.
bowel moves naturally, and when it doesn't contract, then
actually gets paralyzed. It just won't squeeze.
Okay.
And so you can't push the stuff out. And anyways, they asked the parents about 8 months later to put the kids back on milk, and believe it or not, they did. And within 5 to 7 days, all the kids became severely constipated. Anyway, the foods that make you constipated are any animal foods because they have no fiber, and an additional problem of dairy because it paralyzes the bowel. So if you want to have a good bowel movement, what you start is with the proper foods. And we teach you a diet of starches, in other words, beans and corn and rice and potatoes and sweet potatoes. And that's what you eat most of, 90% of the food. And then you fill it in with fruits and vegetables, no animal foods at all, no added oils. And that's the basic diet. With that prescription, pretty much everybody's going to do just fine. But
because starches are filled with fiber.
Yeah, only plant foods have fiber.
Okay.
But there are some additional things that people can do and they're listed in that September 2002 newsletter, which you'll find on our website.
There's even more probably that you've discovered in the last 20 years.
Well, I'm going to let you tell them about those.
Well, I don't know all of them.
Well, it's a traditional thing. You can drink more water. You can take more fruit juice, particularly prune juice. The only juice that we serve at the McDougall program is prune juice. And that's because we need to get people moving, when they join the program. But otherwise, they have no juices at all during the program. But prune juice is a great laxative.
Don't do much for me. I'm sorry.
And then there are some other additions that you can make. Mary, maybe you could tell them a little bit about those, because you have a good memory for all those different supplements.
Well, we've had people that have talked to us about this, and so we've done some research. And there's a couple of natural herbal products like senna. There's a senna extract that you can actually buy.
And that's a stimulant. It stimulates the bowels. It's not just
but
fiber.
It's natural. It's not.
Yeah,
it's not a laxative or anything. It's just a natural.
Well, it doesn't give you the
yeah.
kind of results many of these over-the-counter or doctor prescribed ones do.
And then there's one called Swiss Chris.
Yeah.
That's it's got senna in it also, but it also has a bunch of leaves like strawberry leaves and extracts of these things. And there's something called prune lax,
Yep.
which is basically prunes put into a little pill form, so you don't have to chew the prunes or drink the prune juice, right?
Those all help, and you might try that. There's also the old standby, which is milk of magnesia, but you're getting into some pretty serious stimulation of the bowels. But you won't have to resort to that if you eat a good diet, unless
Okay,
you're one
I
of
have
those
another
rare-
question.
All right.
What about people that have the opposite problem?
I was just going to ask that.
Okay.
No, there might be some people that they're not worried about constipation. They're worried about going too
Well,
much.
believe it or not, we get people like that almost every program. Somebody will come in and they'll tell this very distressing story about how they live in the bathroom, the computer's in the bathroom, the telephone's in the bathroom. These days, that's not a difficult thing to do. But back when I started in medicine, it was a big deal to bring your computer or your telephone in the bathroom. You had to get a jack in the wall. I mean, they wouldn't be, I can recall this one woman who's a very important businesswoman in San Francisco. She hadn't been to a business meeting in 2 years because she was afraid of the sudden distress that would happen.
So she used Zoom before Zoom was popular.
Oh, come on, Mary, that's too much. Yeah, you're right. That's a Zoom.
No, that's not how I meant it.
Well, anyway, when I see these people, I explain to them that, the problem is the oil in their food. And this work was done by Dr. Andreessen, published in Gut in the early 1970s. He took people who had damage to the last part of their small intestine, the ileum. And because of the damage to the ileum, they couldn't absorb bile acids that were made in the liver. And these bile acids, they passed on into the large intestine, were very irritating. So they'd result in up to 20 watery stools a day, terrible distress. And Dr. Andreessen, back in the early 70s, he told them, what you need to do is you need to eat a low-fat diet, like our diet. And within 2 or 3 days, they were having 2 to 4, not even that many, 1 to 2 formed stools just by that particular prescription, get the oil out of the diet. So, those of you who are having loose stools, that's one of the first things I would think about.
Well, what if that doesn't work?
Well, if that doesn't work, then what I do is I give them a bile acid sequestering agent. Okay, these were originally invented for lowering cholesterol. They're Cholested and Questran. There are a couple brands.
You can't buy those over the
No,
counter,
you have to have
right?
your doctor prescribe. But any doctor would prescribe it. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't go into the body. It stays in the bowels. And these agents, they grab a hold of bile acids. Remember, it's the bile acids that irritate the bowel, which give you the frequent watery stools, the distress. And so they grab a hold of these bile acids. So, if somebody tells me a story like I just explained to you, I'll give them a prescription for Questran or Cholested, which they can use like if they're going to a meeting or if they're getting on an airplane. They'll take this Questran or Cholested before they get on the airplane, and they're just fine. So it starts with diet, and then you use some simple over-the-counter additions, including prune juice, and if you're having a problem with too frequent, too loose stools, then what you want to do is of course, you can eat a low-fat diet because fat stimulates the production of bile acids. The more fat you eat, the more bile acids the liver makes, and the more diarrhea that you have.
So does it take time? I mean, immediately when you change your diet, does this work right away, or does it sometimes take time?
Oh, just a couple of days. So, in fact, within probably hours. I want to mention some other people that have trouble. If you've lost your gallbladder,
Oh, yeah.
then
okay.
one of the frequent problems after you've lost your gallbladder, because the gallbladder stores bile acids, and now there's no place for the bile acids to be stored. Gallbladder's gone. And so the bile acids constantly drip into your intestinal tract, even at times when there's no food there. And so one of the common complaints of people who had their gallbladder out is they have terrible diarrhea and still abdominal distress. So again, you want to go for a low-fat diet, like we teach. No added oil in our diet, no vegetable oil, of course, no animal products, which are loaded with fat. And that usually solves the problem. And then, if you still have distress or you need an occasional really extra help, you get one of these bile acid sequestering agents like Questran or Cholested.
So if people change to the the kind of diet that we recommend,
Mm.
and they don't have a gallbladder.
Right.
So the bile acid is dripping into their colon all the time.
All the time.
So even changing their diet might not be enough.
Well, except they're eating a low-fat diet now, and fat stimulates the production of bile acids. Plus,
Oh, okay, so there wouldn't be as many bile
you
acids.
cut the bile acid production down greatly. Plus, one other important thing happens, Mary, and that is the plant fibers. They bind and absorb the bile acids. So you're eating a high-fat, all plant food-based diet, and so these various fibers that grab a hold of the bile acids and deactivate them. So there's a double mechanism on how it works as far as calming down the bowels if you have too frequent bowel movements. So that's pretty much what I wanted to tell you as an introduction. Nobody else is going to talk to you about the perfect bowel movement. So plan on it. It's only at 5 o'clock on Sunday you'll have this kind of discussion. But of course you can watch the videos that we suggested and we recommended in your.
Well, and they should also read that September 2002 newsletter, because there's a lot more in there than just that one little thing that you read.
Well, there's a book that we published in 2007, Dr. McDougall's Digestive Tune-Up, which is still a national bestseller. You can get it on Amazon. And that's a really fun book to read. It takes
It's short and it's funny.
It's funny and short, and it's got nice pictures in it.
Yeah.
Dr. McDougall's Digestive Tune-Up. So you can get that book if you want to have a more thorough read. And you can read the whole 2002 series, and it goes all the way from bad breath to bad farts. It tells you what to do with it. And we could talk about that before we end. We could talk about bad farts, what your bowel movements smell like, and nobody's going to talk to you about this, okay?
I wonder why.
Depends upon what you eat. And so if you eat fruits and vegetables, guess what? If you eat dead animals, guess what?
Okay.
And fish is particularly bad. Anyway, we should probably drop that
That's
subject.
probably
Oh,
enough,
Heather, do you
yes.
have any questions?
I have so many. So lots of people watched your talk on the lower GI and have lots of questions. One that keeps coming up is about diverticulitis and whether that can be cured, what causes it, and if there's a cure.
Right. Well, diverticuli they're little balloon pouches that blow out in the large intestine. Usually they can blow out anywhere in the intestinal tract. But what we're talking about, diverticular disease, is primarily in the large intestine, where the walls of the intestine actually blow out into balloons. And 40 to 50% of people over the age of 50 on the Western diet have diverticular disease. And this disease, it bleeds frequently because where these pouches blow out is next to a blood vessel. And I can remember being on surgical operations where a patient was bleeding from their intestinal tract. The only way we could save their life was to cut into their abdomen and take a large section of the bleeding bowel out, but otherwise they'd have died. So the bleeding could be quite serious. The other thing is these little pouches, they get infected, and we call that diverticulitis. Now, the nice thing is if you change your diet, the diverticuli will not go away. They're permanent structures, but they stop bleeding and they stop getting infected if you change your diet. So you should have no more problems once you make a dietary change.
And what about the old rumor that says you can't eat strawberries and berries that have seeds in them because they get stuck in the little pouches?
In fact, it's not an old rumor. You might hear that from your doctor today.
Okay.
But the scientific research is clear, and it's cited in the book, Dr. McDougall's Digestive Tune-Up. I may have cited it also in the newsletter someplace, but a couple of papers that clearly show, surgeons go in and they look at the diverticuli, or they look at the appendix, which is a diverticuli. It's on the right side of the abdomen. It's a natural structure, the appendix. And the theory is that little strawberry seeds or poppy seeds, they get stuck in either the appendix or the left-sided appendix, which is the diverticuli. And they're the reason that you get this appendicitis or diverticulitis. Not true. What happens is because you have unhealthy contents of the large intestine, it inflames the opening of the diverticuli, and these openings shut down because they're swollen and irritated. And the fluids build up behind the closed diverticuli and they get infected. Now, the treatment for this is antibiotics, and if it gets really bad, surgery. So,
But don't they even treat appendicitis with antibiotics these days?
these days they do, yeah. These days, it used to be when I lost my appendix when I was 7 years old.
Oh,
So
I was,
no, I was 24.
I was 10 when I lost mine.
I lost my tonsils at 7. I was 24 when I lost my appendix. They took it out by surgery. I was eating the Western diet when I was 24. They took it out by surgery, but even at that time in Europe, the common way to treat appendicitis was antibiotics. These days, if you have appendicitis, you go into the emergency room, the doctor does a CAT scan. I believe it's a CAT scan, not an MRI. And they visualize the appendix and make the diagnosis. And then what you put is on a course of antibiotics, not taken to surgery routinely. Surgery is reserved for people who are really sick or have ruptures of the appendix. So yeah, things have changed in the treatment.
Yeah.
So I think that answers your question on diverticular disease. You don't want to get it. It doesn't exist in populations of people who eat the Western, or eat the diet like we do. In other words, in rural Africa, I've talked to you about Dennis Burkett, or you heard about him when you watched the videos we assigned to you. In Uganda, where he worked, 10 million people took care of for 17 years, 1,000 hospitals. They never saw diverticular disease. Okay, never had constipation either. Never, and so you want to prevent it. And if you already have it, as I say, 40 to 50% of people have diverticuli when they get over the age of 50. If you want to prevent any problems, you just fix the food. You put good stuff in the intestine and it responds in a good way. Does that make a lot of sense?
It does, but surprisingly, many people don't understand that. So thank you for explaining that. This next question is from Jordan. He just turned 30 and was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis and has been in a flare for a year now. But he's been vegan for 10 years now. So he was just wondering, following a plant-based diet, what else should he be doing?
Well, Heather, vegan means nothing to me because, a vegan could live on Cokes and potato chips. If he's a typical vegan, which is a vegan that eats vegetable oil in their diet, then he's not going to get better. Neither are you going to get better with other autoimmune diseases.
Well, even a plant-based diet, even if they're not eating junk, if they're eating oil with their plant-based diet,
they're not going to get better.
They're still having problems.
They're not going to get better. There's a study. It's referenced in the video I did on autoimmune disease, which you'll find on YouTube. There's a study referenced where they fasted people with autoimmune diseases. In this case, it was psoriatic arthritis and rheumatoid arthritis. And they fasted them in 7 days, they all cleared up, or at least dramatic improvements. And then they took them and changed them back to eating. And they fed them a diet that was about 50% vegetable oil, which is not unusual for a...
Seems like a lot.
Yeah, I know it does, but when you take a percent of calories, if you looked at volume, it'd be a lot, but percent of calories a diet, that's 50% fat. It's not, they're swimming. These dishes these vegans eat are swimming in oil. So all of them got sick again, except for those with psoriatic arthritis. I don't know why they stayed okay. But if you're trying to get well, you have to eat a good diet. And you start out with our basic diet without gluten and without soy products. And the reasons I won't go into, but gluten opens up the bowel wall and allows foreign proteins to get into the system. So you start out with the basic McDougall diet, starches, vegetables, and fruits, but no wheat, barley, and rye. And that's your initial phase, and that you should start to get better. With ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, one of the common problems is terrible diarrhea. I just told you how that gets better. It gets better right away. Many of the people in Andreessen's study had Crohn's disease, which is basically the same disease as ulcerative colitis. They're both called inflammatory bowel disease. So you start out with that particular plan, starch-based diet, fruits and vegetables, no oil, gluten-free, wheat, barley, and rye, no. And then what you do is you go on to the elimination diet. And the elimination, all this is described for you in my May 2014 newsletter. Plus it's on that video I just talked to you about. You should expect to get better. It's drastically better. In fact, cured. Many people are cured We have people, again, we don't have a randomized controlled trial on this, but we've got many studies, by the way, and they're cited in the lecture on autoimmune diseases. I cited them for you. You could read the references on inflammatory bowel disease and how it's caused by the Western diet. And other researchers have shown this, not just the McDougall program. Anyways, you should get better. It may take as long as 4 months. These inflammatory bowel diseases, they're pretty far advanced. And so it's not like an arthritis that goes away, starts to go away in 4 to 7 days. It takes a while, but you should feel immediate improvement, like within a week. And by 4 months, you ought to be clear that you're doing the right thing. I don't want to hear you're a vegan. You ought to be clear.
What about nuts and seeds? You're mentioning oils. Do nuts and seeds, that's a high fat food. Does that matter?
I would leave it out on when I'm taking autoimmune diseases, because all you have to do is crunch a peanut with your teeth and you free up a lot of the oil. So, and just to be on the safe side, I wouldn't add nuts and seeds and avocados to your diet.
Well, because that'd be like adding oil.
It'd be,
so it'd be
a little healthier, but yeah, it wouldn't
be good for your bowels, probably.
For any autoimmune disease, it would not be a good idea. And then I want to offer you one final attempt that, either people who didn't follow the program and didn't get well, which, it happens, even with our encouragement, even having gone through either the resort program or now the 12-day internet program. There are people who, plain and simple, don't get it the first time or aren't willing to do it 100%.
Or it's too hard.
Well, it's not hard, but they think it's hard.
They think it's too hard.
And anyway, or let's just say occasionally what I recommend doesn't work. And I do mean occasionally. What I'll do is I'll send them off to True North, to Alan Goldhammer's prison, which is in Santa Rosa, California. I've had a relationship with them for almost 30 years, and I'll send maybe 1 or 2 people a year over to their program, either because people wouldn't comply with the program or they didn't get better from inflammatory.
You have to tell them what prison actually means.
They lock you up and they feed you water. It's a water fasting institute, but it is the ultimate in eliminating bad things. You don't eat.
Great results.
He does. It's a well worthwhile effort, but it's only temporary. You got to start eating again. So what they teach you at True North is they teach you the McDougall diet without salt and sugar. But basically, it's the McDougall diet they teach you. They use our materials and so on.
It's almost like the elimination diet.
Well, yeah, except salt and sugar is a real heavy emphasis on that, which I don't agree with. I think you can have a little salt and sugar. Anyway, on the elimination diet, you're allowed a little salt and sugar. So I think that's enough on inflammatory bowel disease.
All right, let's see. Anthony just wrote in, what about the argument about choline? I know it's not true, but what can you say about that?
Well, choline is in supplements and it's in animal foods. Choline and carnitine, they break down in the intestinal tract of a meat eater into trimethylamine. Okay, a meat eater, you have to have bacteria growing in your intestinal tract that only occur when you eat animal foods. Vegans don't have these bacteria, so you can feed them choline from supplements or any animal products, or carnitine, which comes in supplements also. And they won't develop trimethylamine, TMA. Trimethylamine is absorbed in the intestinal tract if it is produced by people who don't eat a vegan diet. It's absorbed into the intestinal tract, into the bloodstream, and in the liver, it's converted into trimethylamine oxide, TMAO. TMAO is toxic to the arteries, and it's one of the major factors in the cause of atherosclerosis, heart attacks, strokes, etc.
So, excuse me, but why would someone take a supplement of choline?
Well, they're told that it's good for them. Choline is part of lecithin. They're told they need to eat these good cholines and lecithin stuff. It's going to be good for the nervous system. Hey, they're selling supplements. Leave them alone. They're selling useful, harmful supplements. And, carnitine has to do with muscles, carnivore, animals. And so they got the idea that if you eat more of the precursors carnitine, that you'll grow more muscles and you'll be bigger and stronger. You'll look like a weightlifter. It's not true. You'll make yourself sick. And the other thing you need to know about eating choline and carnitine is that it produces TMA, trimethylamine. Trimethylamine stinks. There's a syndrome called fish odor syndrome, where people can't metabolize trimethylamine. Remember, it's produced by taking these supplements or eating animal foods, and it's called fish odor syndrome.
So your whole body smells
your whole
like
body.
this?
You stink so bad,
Oh.
people can't stand to be around you. And so that's when you have this genetic problem of metabolizing trimethylamine. Trimethylamine oxide doesn't stink, but the trimethylamine does. It's called fish odor syndrome. So usually if you eat the Western diet, you stink like fish, in addition to stinking like animals, but particularly from the sulfur. It's a whole nother lecture.
Really?
Yeah.
Another Sunday. Okay, well, so on the supplement topic, you mentioned in one of your talks that you don't recommend taking magnesium.
This is as a drug, Heather, not as a normal supplement. In other words, you would take it if you had a terrible constipation problem, just one dose, but not as a daily supplement. It increases the risk of dying of heart disease.
Well, she was taking it at 400 milligrams every night for years.
Well, she shouldn't do that. She's probably taking it for restless leg syndrome. Because
That's
it's
the
common.
next part of the question. She's taking magnesium cream at night to help with restless legs. And is that okay?
Doesn't work. Doesn't work. No, it's not okay. There's a long story that goes along with that. Back when I was a young doctor, ancient times, but when people would come to the emergency room with heart attacks, they'd often have low magnesium levels in their body. And so we would give them magnesium, and it may have saved some lives. They were depleted from magnesium because they were taking diuretics, drugs, water pills. And so we'd give magnesium as part of their initial care. And it may work. Let's just say it did work. But what they decided to do was to follow up. They did 2 major studies to follow up to see whether or not taking magnesium daily for a year resulted in general health improvement or a reduction in heart disease. They found the opposite. They found that those who are on the magnesium supplement had more heart attacks, more death, more repeat heart surgeries than those on the placebo. Don't do it.
So what do you do for restless leg syndrome instead of that?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know any really good answers. I think a lot of people have restless leg syndrome. They just don't sleep well. And so they're laying there at night, they're just wiggling their legs. They're not tired enough at night. And so my recommendation would be get less sleep. You're trying to sleep too much. The other thing is to exercise your legs. I think that might be helpful. But I don't know of any magic pill for restless leg syndrome. I certainly wish I did. I think exercising and controlling the amount of sleep that you get so that you're tired when you go to bed. There's a whole discussion we'll do on sleep. But we're not going to do it today.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, lots of questions still coming about digestive issues. Can we get back to digestion just a little bit?
Sure.
Let's see. Well, more about our ulcerative colitis. Well, how about a question about hemorrhoids? What do you do if you've got hemorrhoids?
Okay. Well, first of all, you get hemorrhoids, not from sitting on cold toilet seats, okay? Not from being pregnant, even though being pregnant, when you push to deliver the baby, it stretches out the hemorrhoid veins, but it doesn't cause hemorrhoids. Again, I'll refer back to Dennis Burkitt and his work involving 10 million people, 1,000 hospitals, 17 years, the head of the Ministries of Health in Uganda, never saw hemorrhoids, okay? Hemorrhoids occur as a consequence of straining to move the rock-hard intestinal marble out of the body, okay? What happens when you eat a no-fiber diet or a low-fiber diet, which is the Western diet, remember, no fiber and animal products, is you end up, after you get through the small intestine, with this tiny mass of partially digested material with some dead intestinal cells. And that goes into the large intestine, it's a little bit of stuff. And the large intestine takes water out of it and concentrates it further. So you make this little tiny rock hard bowel movement. And the movement is moved along the large intestine, up the ascending, over the transverse, down the descending by pulsations. It's called peristalsis. And when you have a tiny stool, you have to contract at high pressures. And that's how you get the diverticuli. And then when it gets to the end of the large intestine, then you've got to get it to see fresh air. And you would think about the man or woman sitting on the throne, grunting and groaning and straining, and their face turning red. Well, that kind of grunting and groaning and straining to get the bowel movement to finally come to see the world. What happens, it dilates the veins all over your body. It dilates the veins in the last part of your intestinal tract, which are called the hemorrhoidal veins. They're there for social reasons, to close the anus so you don't pass stool or gas at inappropriate times. But they get stretched out and they hang out your butt. So what do you do about it? Well, the bleeding and the itching, they'll go away when you eat a good diet, but the hemorrhoids aren't going to go away. They're permanent structural changes. So what do you do about it? Well, they have laser, you got to mechanically deal with it. They will band them with rubber bands. They will tie them off so that the hemorrhoid dies and it goes away. Or they'll burn them off with lasers. Or the way we used to do it is we'd cut them out. Oh,
Yeah, we used to have
God.
hemorrhoidectomies.
Was that brutal? My goodness.
I remember those.
What we did to a patient was just, you talk about medieval, criminal, dungeon-like torturous things we did to people. If you'd have seen a hemorrhoidectomy when Mary and I were first in surgery, it was just
that was 50
amazing.
years ago. So they've changed since then.
They have.
I don't think they do those anymore.
Well, I don't know. I don't put my colleagues past anything. If they happen to pay more for hemorrhoidectomy.
Yeah, but I think they have better treatments.
Well, they do banding.
Don't they burn them off too?
Well, that would be the laser, like,
Oh, okay.
banding, burning and stuff. And just leave them alone. Eat well, live with them. They're not cosmetically
they
very
go away?
appealing.
Don't they go?
No.
They kind of shrink.
No. Well, a little bit, maybe not much. They're not going to go away. They're mechanical stretch out.
Well, if you have these hemorrhoidal veins hanging out,
They keep hanging out.
well, maybe people don't want those.
Well, then it's a cosmetic issue, or it could trouble you some other way, like itching or bleeding.
Yeah.
Then what you do is you go for a mechanical procedure.
Okay.
Like you ligate them with a rubber band or with a thread, or
And they
you
just tie them off.
tie them off. Yeah, ligate, tie
And they
off.
die.
They died. Hemorrhoid falls out.
Yeah.
Dead hemorrhoid. Gone. But then you don't have hemorrhoids.
Probably more than any of these people wanted to know about.
Heather, it gets to the point, and back when we were doing hemorrhoidectomies, you end up with an incompetent anus, and then you can't hold your stool. So, I'd be careful about interventions that take and destroy these veins.
Oh, Heather, remember about 10 years ago when they invented these fat substitutes, and they had to take them off the market because of anal leakage?
Yeah.
So,
Fats potato chips that you,
The baked lays.
anal leakage, they had to get rid of them.
All right, let's see.
Lots of doctors will take care of your hemorrhoids.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. This question's from Linda. You've mentioned cataracts in a previous talk. Can they be reversed?
No, there's permanent scar tissue in the lens. Not going to go away. But fortunately, ophthalmologists have a really good treatment. That's replacing the lens with a glass plastic composite. A miracle operation.
Yeah, that works really well.
Except for a rare person, it doesn't work well at all. But otherwise, it's one of the modern medical miracles is for the doctor to take this scarred lens out of your eye. They do it as an office procedure. And they replace it with this composite lens. And all of a sudden you can see. Now, the question that may have come up is, why do you get cataracts? Well, vegetable oils may be involved. But I think more likely is involved dairy products. And I'll tell you how this works. Lactose breaks down into galactose and glucose. galactose is a milk sugar. There are people who have a genetic problem called galactosemia. And one of the manifestations of this genetic problem where they can't metabolize galactose and the galactose levels rise real high in the body is they have cataracts when they're teens. They're horrible cataracts. Well, okay, that's for people who have galactosemia. But if you're going to be eating dairy products, you're going to be producing galactose as a breakdown product of lactose. And I think that's the cause of the damage to the lens.
That damages the eyes?
The lens, yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know, and it's based on the work on galactosemia. You know, I gave you reasons all the way from
another reason to stop eating dairy products.
all the way from your eyes to your hemorrhoids to stop eating dairy products.
That
Don't
seems
do it.
to be the number one culprit, right?
Yeah.
The
Well,
dairy.
you know, Heather, if I was going to ask people to do one thing, and we do this, we sometimes get down to a game. Okay, you're going to eliminate, you're going to keep the fruits and vegetables and the grains in your diet. We know that. You're either going to eliminate the meat or the dairy, which would be better for you and your family. The answer is get rid of the dairy. You know, if you a choice of one or two, meat or the dairy, get rid of the dairy because it's liquid meat. It basically is liquid meat plus a whole bunch of other problems. Plus, it has to do with your attitude about dairy. You think dairy is health food. You eat it guiltlessly. You at least are aware that meat is not good for you and not good for the animals, but it's the way you eat. You sit down to a block of cheese, you go, oh, calcium. You sit down to a block of cheese, you go, ugh, no fiber, constipation, leukemia viruses, galactose. I'm not going to eat that stuff or feed it to my kids. It's, you know, the tide has turned. You know, the public information about the awareness of dairy has gotten to the point where the average consumer is told this is unhealthy to put dairy in your diet. This is not some kind of mystery that only Dr. McDougall knew 50 years ago.
Well, do they really hear that often?
Not that often because the dairy industry is really rich and they do lots of advertisements to counteract it. And they spin everything they can out of the truth, and they spin it on their website. If you go to the dairy industry's website, they'll lie about the scientific research, and plus they pay for scientific studies where they hire doctors, scientists to do research that shows that their products are good for them, but they get caught. It's not like they can fool me or their colleagues. They just design the experiment such that it shows what they want to be shown. They don't exactly lie. They just lie. Anyway, it's money, folks. And I think we mentioned that a few times.
Unfortunately, it is. Let's see, what else? Next question came from, this is one I haven't heard in a while, but I'm sure you have an answer from it about this. This is from Jean. She has a question about lichen sclerosis.
Yeah, this is a condition, as I remember, I haven't reviewed it in a long time, where you get lesions in your skin. It's often related to having diabetes, and it's probably falls under the category of autoimmune diseases. And yes, I've had a few people with that problem who've been able to resolve it by changing their diet. I know, here he goes again. Broken record, diet's going to fix everything. Well, it does. You know, I can't help it. You're being poisoned by the rich Western diet. It's massive. It poisons you from the top of your hair follicles to the bottom of your toenails. Good grief. If you were a farmer, wouldn't you pay attention to the soil? I mean, would you listen to somebody who said it didn't matter whether you planted your plants in mud or rocks or sand or good soil? It doesn't make a difference. What do you think when a doctor tells you just eat a well-balanced diet?
They don't know what a well-balanced diet is.
It's what they have at their own dinner table.
Yeah, that's true.
But people can't see beyond their own dinner plate. So it's, you know, it's like you ask a doctor what an alcoholic is, and an alcoholic is somebody who drinks 2 more drinks than they do.
Let's see, next question. This is from Carol. She took antibiotics for bronchitis. How can she get her system back in good working order? Does she take probiotics?
She's worried about killing the normal bacteria in the intestinal tract. They'll grow back. You just have to feed them good food. You don't have to take probiotics. You can, but I don't see it as a necessary step. Lactobacillus and acidophilus bacteria, they either only temporarily stay in the bowel or they don't live there at all. They just pass through. So, when you buy these probiotics, you'll be lucky if you see some benefits worth the money. You just eat good. And what happens is the bacteria are every place. They're every time you touch a surface, every time you touch somebody else's hand. There are bacteria that are transferred to your gut. It only takes a couple of bacteria to turn into trillions. And they'll do that in a matter of just days. And so you repopulate your bowel. But what grows in your bowel depends upon what you feed it. If you want good guys to grow in your bowel, you feed them starches, vegetables, and fruits. You want bad guys to grow, bad guys that cause heart disease and cancer, that destroy the intestinal lining. You want bad guys to grow, you feed them meat.
You don't want bad guys.
You don't want bad guys to grow in. Don't, have I been clear? What you're supposed to eat is you're supposed to have oatmeal for breakfast, waffles and pancakes. You're supposed to have for lunch and dinner. What are you having tonight, Mary?
Oh, I made pea soup tonight. So we're having pea soup and a loaf of fresh bread. So it's already made. It's been cooking for 2 days because we really don't like hard split green peas. So I cook them in my slow cooker for 2 days so they get really, really soft.
And not only are we looking forward to it, we also have our grandsons here, our grandson.
Yeah.
And so they're looking forward to it. They were so excited. All of our grandkids, if you ask, what do you want grandma to fix for dinner when we go over there? Pea soup or sometimes mashed potatoes, but it's usually pea soup. We want pea soup. So anyway, you just bean burritos, various kinds of vegetable soups, spaghetti and marinara sauce, mushu vegetables over rice. That's what you need to eat. Mary has published over 4,000 recipes. You can go to the App Store and there's a McDougall mobile cookbook app. You can download it. It's like $5. It's got 1,000 recipes on it, plus a lot of other helpful things that you can do. You
Like
go
a shopping list and all kind, and a way to mark your favorites.
Yeah.
So it's really easy.
There you go. Invest $5. You can do that, or you can pick up the books. There are thousands of recipes in the books. And
there are thousands of recipes online too.
And on the website. And plus, you and Heather tell me that Instagram is just loaded with people who follow our program, who are coming up with new and interesting things. And
beautiful pictures.
And they eat just like we recommended, which is really shocking to us, is people get it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
If you want any inspiration for a meal, just go to Instagram and there's just hundreds of pictures.
What do you type in? I don't know how to work Instagram. What do you type in? You type in Instagram, then you type in McDougall or what? What do you type?
The McDougall Program.
All right.
Yeah. And there's gorgeous pictures and it'll just inspire you of what to cook for dinner. And usually it's really simple, which is really nice. That's what I love about it, is all the recipes, all the pictures of the recipes of the food on Instagram are just really simple things that anybody could put together. And they just look so good. And it's a huge plate of food. It's not just a little bit. It's just, more than anybody could eat. So, even you.
So, this is not about sacrifice. This is about giving up the battle of the bulge in a lifetime of sickness. What are you waiting for? You're going to look back once you make the change. You're going to say, just like other good things in life, you're going to say, why didn't I do this before? And if you've tried and it hasn't worked out for you, we're here to help. We've got 13 national best-selling books. YouTube is loaded with lectures that I've given, and Mary's given, and Heather's given. We also have a 12-day telemedicine, internet-based program where we take care of people all over the world. And our medical director, Dr. Lim, he gives you excellent medical advice, takes you off your unnecessary medications. 90% of people who attend our program reduce or stop their medications. You get some other doctor to tell you to stop your medication. I doubt it. They're going to manage you. They're going to move you from one drug to the next. Anyway, it's a 12-day. You got one starting this Friday, Heather.
August 19th.
Yeah,
August
I'm
19th.
looking forward to that.
2022. And, lives will be changed. If people at the end of the program will say, that's the best money and time I've spent. So again, what are you waiting for? Let us help you if it hasn't worked out so far. It's what we really focus on. And it's the only thing commercially that we tell you about.
Some people really need the help.
They all need it. I need it. I like attending the program because it helps me.
Yeah, I like it too because it gives me food ideas. We talk about food every morning, so I always figure, well, I have to make something really great for dinner so I can talk about it the following morning and get people inspired. And it's always really easy.
And Jack makes me want to exercise. Jack Dixon and Doug Lyle, makes me want to understand why I do the things I do to myself and what about the pleasure trap is about. And Jeff Novick, he just makes you laugh for 5 hours.
One explains
really
calorie density,
Yeah.
the cooking demo. So,
And then Heather gives these phenomenal lectures on eating out and
Stock in your kitchen.
stock in your kitchen. Like I say, what are you waiting for? Life is short. All these miracles are there for you. I wouldn't make you this promise if I didn't believe I could honor it. I've been doing this for half a century. 46 years I've been doing this. 12,000 people I've taken care of.
At least.
At least.
And that's only the ones you know about all the people that
The hundreds of thousands that have listened to
followed
us.
us online.
And by the way, you can do this for free. On our website is a 12-day program. You can do it for free. It's not that hard. The rules are in 2 sentences. The McDougall diet is based on starches, vegetables, and fruits. The McDougall diet second sentence, the McDougall diet does not contain animal foods or oils. 2 sentences. That's it. It's that simple. The truth is simple and easy to understand. But, change is difficult. And that's why we're here to help. We can get you through the obstacles and give you that personal medical care that you absolutely must have. People come in on bags full of drugs and they leave. Well, I told you the results, published results, 90% of patients are able to reduce or stop their medications.
get their life back.
They do. And, one of the things, Heather, we've talked about this a lot, is that, if we do something, like, for example, this hour we're spending together now, and we fail to get positive comments back on it, we're going to do something else. And all through our careers, whether we took adventure trips or ran resort programs or wrote books, unless we got a raving response, we went on to something else. And the 12-day internet program is just full of accolades for good reason. It does what it says it does. Anyway, let's get on to some questions.
We've only got 7 minutes left and tons of questions, but this is from Doreen. Any recommendations? And I got one from Leslie about the same thing. Any recommendations for recent bloating, burping, discomfort at night or when my stomach is empty? And these are from people following a starch-based diet.
Well, you could try activated charcoal. The first thing I think is you've got some kind of irritation going on. All right. Irritation on our diet comes from raw vegetables, particularly onions, green peppers, cucumbers, and radishes. You got to get rid of the raw vegetables, folks. The lettuce, the kale, to stop the irritation. The next thing is the fruit juice. If you're consuming pineapple juice, orange juice, irritation leads to belching. And then the next thing you would do is
well, you just said activated charcoal.
Yeah, I did mention activated charcoal, but this is something people are probably pretty much unfamiliar with. But activated charcoal is something that we still feed daily in emergency rooms when people suffer from poisoning. They get activated charcoal because it takes and picks up a whole bunch of things that are irritating and poisonous in the intestinal tract. And you can investigate this on the website. You can figure out activated charcoal, what the dose is, and so on. But it's mainly stopping the irritation. The next thing you might consider doing is raising the head of your bed, because many of you have an incompetent lower esophageal sphincter. And when you lay down at night, gravity pulls the acid up into your esophagus and burns it. So you put 4-inch blocks under your bed, like a 4x4.
Just under the head of your bed.
Just, yeah, not all 4 posts. and you lay with gravity pulling the acid out of your upper stomach and esophagus.
Yeah, that very often stops the belching.
Yeah, because the belching is due to irritation mostly. So that's what I would try. And then you could go on to activated charcoal. And there are also some methicone products that you buy, they're put out by drug companies. It's been so long since I've recommended it, it'd be hard to tell you about it, but simethicone is one of the things you'll find on the pharmacy shelves that's recommended for gas.
Thank you. Let's see, so many great comments that I want to read. I don't have time. From Equalizer 94, can you get too little salt in the diet? I'm SOS free.
Well, yeah, you can, but you really you have to go below 50 milligrams of sodium to get into a situation where you'd be sick. You can't do that. The basic diet has around 300 to 500 milligrams of sodium in it.
Just from the vegetables.
Right.
I think, isn't celery really high in sodium?
Right, but the sodium is picked up from the ground by plants, and it's incorporated into their roots and leaves and stems and flowers and fruits. So you eat the sodium that originally came from the ground. So you can't miss. Our basic diet is around 500 milligrams of sodium.
And that's plenty.
We recommend allow whatever for the enjoyment of the food. If you don't like the food, if you don't like the diet, it's because of the lack of salt. So we suggest you add a half a teaspoon of table salt to your food daily. Half a teaspoon is a lot. And you add it to the surface so you can taste it.
In little amounts.
Well,
not all at once.
You like sprinkle a tiny one?
Sprinkle a tiny bit.
Yeah, not let's pour it on your oatmeal. Throughout the day. Okay, so a half a teaspoon of salt. That's a tremendous amount of taste, but that's only 1,100 milligrams of sodium. Our diet's 500. That's 1,100 just added with a half teaspoon of salt. If you are dying in the intensive care unit in your local hospital, their low sodium diet is 2,000 milligrams, or 400 more milligrams of sodium than ours is with an added half a teaspoon of salt. If you'll like the food, if you add a little salt on the surface, do it. We want you to like the food. We want you to stick with it and enjoy it. That's why we also
but you also your taste buds change. So after you've eaten a lower sodium or a no added salt diet, your taste buds. So when you eat salt, it tastes really salty. So your taste buds change.
Plus, I could give you a 15-minute lecture on why low sodium diets are unhealthy and you need a certain amount of sodium. That taste bud was not put on the tip of your tongue for an accident.
We'll have to do a whole program on that.
We'll do a whole talk on that sometime. And there's more research. There's an article that came out last week at National Headlines saying that low salt diets are not helpful. And anyway, I don't want to get into it because you'll get the wrong bias out of it. Yes, you should eat a lower sodium diet. Yes, you should. But too low sodium is not your goal for 2 reasons. 1, it may be unhealthy. 2, is you want you to like the food.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
eat the food.
Have we decided what we're talking about next week?
Well, I think we should talk about the upper intestinal tract. We should talk about bad breath. We should talk about gallbladder disease. We should talk about ulcers. Boy, that'll at least get us started. I don't have any nice quotes that I can think of, but maybe I'll find one that I wrote 20 years ago to start out with. But I think the upper intestinal tract would be a good thing to talk about. But if you have suggestions, we'll let you know during the week what the topic is and what the YouTube presentation that you ought to be watching should be. We're going to have some really popular topics during our initial presentations so that you will come back. And you'll invite your friends and family who need us.
And we'll always take time to answer questions about other things.
We covered a pretty big span away from cataracts today to hemorrhoids.
We were all over the place.
we're going to cover a lot of stuff. And I think I know you're not going to become bored. There may be a slight amount of repetition, but Mary and I have been at this for half a century.
Well, people need to hear it more than once.
You need to hear it more than once. I certainly think so.
I'm
You
still
need the
learning.
We've been talking
Hey,
together.
Heather, so are we.
Yeah. We've got some great lectures coming out too. We're going to be doing one for people who have attended the program. We're going to be doing one on vitamins and vitamin D. For alumni, we do ongoing lectures for once you've been through the program. Not only is it 12 days, but we take care of you weekly, then monthly for a year. And plus we continue this ongoing education. Every other week we get together with you. I put together presentations like we're doing the one free to alumni only on vitamins and vitamin D. You'll be able to pick it up on YouTube later, but initially it's done live with question and answers. And then we've got a couple of more intense lectures coming up. One on aging gracefully and how to keep your mind, how to not get dumber as you get older. And then another one on attractiveness, which you're really going to enjoy. It's how to become more attractive. I've had some.
Oh, he's been loving putting that one together.
Each of these presentations takes me between 2 and 4 months to put together. So, they're well done, but so stay tuned. Get involved with us. There's an awful lot that we'd like to share with you.
That was fun. Thanks, Mom and Dad, Dr. McDougall and Mary. I'll see
Okay.
you all next Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific.
All right.
Okay.